There is a kind of silence that exists not in peace but in avoidance, a stillness that is not born from wisdom but from numbness. After great emotional pain, after betrayal, abandonment, or heartbreak, many of us begin to associate love with danger. Vulnerability feels like weakness. And so we retreat. We train our minds to feel less, to desire less, to expect nothing. At first, this feels like power. But emotional numbness is not strength. It is a rejection of one's own humanity. It is the quiet abandonment of the very part of ourselves capable of connection, of meaning, and of becoming. Love, in its truest form, is not merely an emotion. It is a discipline, a practice, a deliberate act of courage to remain open while knowing the risk. To love another is to say, I will remain with you in the chaos. Not because you are perfect, but because you are real and I see myself in your imperfection. In Shaolin philosophy, strength is not measured by how much you can resist the world, but by how deeply you can remain present within it. Love tests this presence more than anything else. It requires an integration of opposing forces: vulnerability and resolve, desire and restraint, freedom and responsibility. To love is not to lose oneself in another, but to discover who you truly are through another. The shared journey of relationship reveals not only joy, but all the unhealed wounds we carry. In this way, love becomes a mirror, and not always a flattering one. This is why many run from it. But the mirror is sacred. It is the arena in which the soul trains itself in humility, compassion, and growth. If we reduce love to pleasure alone, if we seek only the intoxication, the high, the chemistry, we rob it of its transformative power. Pleasure without responsibility leads to emptiness. Passion without depth leads to chaos. Love becomes another product to consume, and people become means to an end. But true love is different. It is not blind. It sees clearly and still chooses to stay, not despite the flaws, but because those flaws are reminders of our shared burden. What it means to be human. To walk through life with someone, both aware of your limitations and still choosing commitment, is the highest form of discipline. The brain, when trained to avoid pain, may also begin to avoid connection. But a life without emotional depth is not a life well lived. It may be safe, but it is sterile. The goal is not to stop feeling. It is to feel wisely. To allow pain to teach, not define. To allow love to challenge, not consume. Unconditional love is an ideal. One we strive toward, not one we achieve perfectly. It does not mean tolerating harm, nor does it mean losing our boundaries. It means remaining open-hearted, even in disappointment. It means recognizing that every person we love is in the process of becoming, just as we are. Love, then, is not a destination. It is a shared pilgrimage. To love well is to be strong, not in how tightly you can close yourself off, but in how fearlessly you can remain open. To love well is to stay, to listen, to forgive, and to grow, not as a sacrifice of the self, but as the highest expression of it. And so I ask you, are you strong enough to feel again? In times of great suffering, the mind begins to seek escape. It whispers a dangerous promise: if I feel less, I will suffer less. And so, without realizing it, we begin to train ourselves, not to heal but to numb. We disconnect from pain, yes, but in doing so, we also disconnect from the very essence of what it means to live and to love. There is wisdom in learning to regulate the mind, but there is also a threshold, one that if crossed leads not to peace but to silence, a cold kind of silence, not the silence of the mountain or the stillness of the breath, but the emptiness of a life no longer touched by feeling. Love is not a fleeting emotion. It is not simply chemistry, attraction, or temporary desire. Love is a courageous act of will, an agreement between two imperfect beings to walk together through uncertainty. It is a discipline that asks much of us: vulnerability when we would rather close, commitment when escape feels easier, and sacrifice when selfishness tempts. In a world that glorifies detachment as strength, many begin to believe that mastering their emotions means suppressing them, that healing means forgetting, that control means invulnerability. But what kind of strength is it that cannot feel? What kind of mastery is numbness? Love in its truest form does not make us weaker. It forges us. It exposes every fragile corner of the self, not to break us but to transform us. Through love, we learn patience. Through love, we learn forgiveness. Through love, we confront parts of ourselves we would rather avoid. And in doing so, we evolve. But there is danger in confusing momentary pleasure with real love. When love becomes a pursuit of feeling good, of being validated, of satisfying desire without responsibility, we reduce something sacred into something consumable. This kind of love is shallow. It cannot endure hardship, nor can it nurture growth. It is not love. It is appetite. Real love is grounded in truth. It demands presence, not fantasy. It grows not in perfection, but in the soil of mistakes, apologies, and conscious effort. It is not glamorous. It is not always sweet. But it is real. And what is real has the power to shape us, morally, emotionally, spiritually. There is a tension always between the ideal of unconditional love and the reality of human flaws. We want to love without conditions, but we are also human with limits, wounds, and fears. To love unconditionally does not mean to tolerate everything. It means to see someone wholly, to understand their darkness as well as their light, and to choose again and again to stand beside them in the becoming. To love someone not despite their flaws, but because of the shared burden of being, is to honor what it means to be human. We are all walking through fire, carrying invisible wounds, yearning to be seen, not just in our beauty, but in our brokenness. And so we must be careful. In the quest to escape pain, do not escape the very thing that gives life its meaning. Do not train your mind to forget how to feel. The heart is not an enemy. Pain is not always harm. Sometimes it is the gateway. If you truly want to be strong, then stay open, stay awake. Let love change you not into something harder, but into something deeper. Let it sharpen your awareness, not dull your soul. This is the path, and the path is not easy, but it is worth it. There is a deep yearning in many of us for order, especially after the storm of heartbreak or betrayal. We crave clarity, predictability, control. The chaos of love, its messiness, its unpredictability, feels like danger. So we build walls. We create systems of detachment, filters of logic and emotional boundaries so high that no one can reach us. But love, by its nature, is chaos. And to sterilize that chaos is to kill the very thing that makes it transformative. To love another human being is to step willingly into the unknown. It is to allow your inner world to be affected, to be stirred, even to be shattered. Love is not a clean, calculated equation. It is a wild current flowing beyond reason and expectation. Yet, within that current, we are offered a chance to cultivate the most profound form of strength, conscious presence amidst emotional uncertainty. This is not weakness. This is the path of the warrior. Philosophically, love asks us to integrate contradiction. It calls for freedom and responsibility, desire and restraint, passion and patience. Psychologically, it demands that we hold space for both the exhilaration of connection and the fear of loss. These tensions are not obstacles. They are the forge in which the soul is refined. When we suppress the chaos of love, when we choose safety over sincerity, predictability over presence, we may avoid pain, yes, but we also extinguish the spark that fuels intimacy, vulnerability, and real growth. The relationship becomes efficient but hollow, stable but dead. To love is to dance with fire, not recklessly but mindfully. The flame is not the problem. It is our inability to sit with discomfort that causes harm. In its highest form, love is not about feeling good. It is about becoming good. More compassionate, you more disciplined, more awake. This becoming is never comfortable. It exposes the ego. It humbles the self. It asks us, can you remain when it no longer feels easy? Can you give even when you don't receive? Can you see your partner not as an ideal, but as a mirror, flawed, imperfect, and sacred? If we reduce love to a hedonistic pursuit, if we chase only the high, the pleasure, the validation, we miss its true purpose. We become consumers of affection, not cultivators of depth. This kind of love cannot endure suffering because it was never rooted in truth. But love grounded in discipline, honesty, and mutual effort becomes alchemical. It transforms the individual through the shared burden of being. Through moments of conflict, reconciliation, and sacrifice, we do not lose ourselves. We find who we are meant to become. And still, the ideal of unconditional love lingers like a distant mountain. We see it, we aspire to it. How do we often fall short? How do we navigate this tension? By accepting that love is not a state, it is a practice. Unconditional love does not mean tolerance of harm. It means remaining open-hearted even when disappointed. It means holding compassion while holding boundaries. It means saying, I will walk with you, not because you are perfect, but because you are real and I am willing. To love someone not despite their flaws, but because of the shared burden of being, is to recognize the common fragility of our humanity. We are all struggling, we are all learning, and love is the space where two people agree to learn together. So, do not fear the chaos. Let it humble you, let it stretch you. But do not silence it, because in that fire, if you remain still and true, something sacred is born. There is a kind of strength that is quiet. It does not roar. It does not seek attention. It moves like the wind through tall grass, Gentle yet unyielding, we often mistake strength for emotional distance. In today's world, to be strong is too often defined as the absence of visible suffering, no tears, no confessions, no cracks in the mask. We learn to hide our wounds, to keep moving, to stay composed. But what is the price of this concealment? True strength is not the denial of pain. It is the willingness to feel, to continue, and to love despite it. Love is not a luxury we indulge in when life is easy. Love is a crucible. It asks more of us than comfort ever could. It pulls forward the most vulnerable parts of who we are and places them in the hands of another. This is not weakness. This is the purest act of courage a human can offer. Psychologically, we are shaped by our early experiences of attachment, of safety, of being seen. When love disappoints us, when it wounds us, we may develop the belief that emotional detachment is the only protection. And so we train ourselves not to need, not to feel or to depend, but in doing so, we do not become stronger, we become isolated. Philosophically, love is not simply an emotion. It is an organizing principle of meaning. It gives context to our sacrifices. It deepens the ordinary. It transforms suffering into connection and solitude into belonging. To love, then, is not to be rescued. It is to participate in the sacred work of becoming. A relationship at its highest potential is a spiritual training ground. Here we are confronted with the paradoxes of love, vulnerability and strength, freedom and loyalty, passion and patience. These forces are not in conflict. They are companions. And learning to hold them together is what refines the soul. When love is reduced to mere pleasure, when it becomes a pursuit of only what feels good, we rob it of its sacred weight. Hedonistic love cannot endure friction. It flees when discomfort arrives. It speaks the language of consumption, not devotion. But love rooted in discipline, in truth, in mutual growth, this love transforms. It does not just soothe wounds, it helps us face them. It requires commitment, not convenience. And in that requirement, it teaches us who we are. We all bleed silently or not. Even the strongest among us carry heartbreak, disappointment, and loss. The question is not whether we have suffered. It is whether we have allowed that suffering to deepen our capacity for empathy, for presence, for connection. To love unconditionally is not to deny the limits of human imperfection. It is to see clearly and still remain. It is to say, I see your flaws and I offer mine. Let us meet, not in fantasy, but in truth. This is not romanticism. It is the highest form of reality. To love someone not despite their flaws, but because of the shared burden of being, is to step into compassion. Not as pity, but as kinship. We are all weathering the same human storm, and love, in its sacred form, says, you, let me walk beside you, not to save you, but to remember with you that we are not alone. True strength is the one who stays soft in a hardened world, who dares to be kind when it would be easier to withdraw, who chooses presence when absence feels safer. That strength doesn't announce itself, it simply remains. And in that silent remaining, love endures. To walk with another person through life is not a smooth journey. It is not a quiet path through gardens, but more often a winding trail cut through unpredictable weather. Sometimes light, sometimes heavy, sometimes unbearable. And yet to love truly is to remain still when the storm arrives. We live in a world that idolizes movement. Progress, change, escape. When love becomes uncomfortable, we look for the exit. When people disappoint us, we withdraw. When we feel misunderstood, we silence ourselves. This reaction is natural, but it is not transformative. Love, its most conscious form, is not reactive. It is responsive. It stays. It breathes. It listens. Psychologically, this form of love requires a rare kind of presence. It asks us to witness without controlling, to support without fixing, to remain open even while we carry the impulse to run. This is not passive. This is active stillness, the strength of presence under emotional pressure. Philosophically, love becomes an act of moral responsibility. It is not simply what we feel. It is what we choose, to be committed, to be kind even when our pride is wounded, to accept the uncomfortable truth that no human being can meet our every need, yet still open our hearts with generosity and grace. In relationships, it is easy to fall in love with the idea of someone, with their light, their laughter, their tenderness. But when their storm comes, when their flaws rise, when their pain erupts, many turn away, the illusion breaks, the fantasy dissolves, and we are left staring at the reality. Love is not about staying only in comfort. It is about standing still when else's chaos. This is where love becomes a spiritual path, not just affection, not just desire, but a daily act of intention. It is here that vulnerability, commitment, and sacrifice begin to shape us. Not as martyrs, but as humans becoming more fully alive. To love another person in their storm is not to lose yourself. It is to learn yourself. You meet your limits, your fears, your control patterns, your patience, or the lack of it. And in that crucible, if you are paying attention, you begin to grow. But if love becomes merely about what feels good, if it is reduced to a hedonistic chase for pleasure, validation, or romantic fantasy, it cannot hold. It collapses when challenged. It dissolves under pressure, and often it leaves behind only bitterness and blame. What endures is a different kind of love, one grounded in truth, in mutual discipline, in a shared desire to rise, not alone but together. This love doesn't idolize perfection. It honors the struggle. It sees the beauty in imperfection. And rather than fleeing the storm, it says, "Let me stand beside you while it passes." To navigate the tension between the ideal of unconditional love and the reality of imperfection is to accept that we will fail each other. We will misunderstand, disappoint, and falter. But true love is not about avoiding these moments. It is about how we return from, how we repair, how we continue. And so we come to the quiet truth: to love someone not despite their flaws, but because of the shared burden of being, is to recognize that their struggle is not separate from yours. You are both carrying the weight of existence. You are both learning how to be human. In that recognition there is compassion. In compassion there is stillness. And in that stillness, even in the storm, there is love.